Welcome, dear friend. I've been quietly awaiting your arrival. Here, within the ancient stillness of Sleepy University, you may find true solace. I am Chancellor Eldrin, here to gently guide your way. Now, I activate my balm of stars, a soft light to comfort your rest and ease your learning. Come, let us softly explore the vast wisdom that waits, where quiet calm brings clear understanding. We begin our journey into the world of ancient Egypt, a civilization that continues to capture our imagination millennia after its decline. But why study the pyramid builders? It's a question worth considering, especially in a world brimming with historical eras and cultures. The answer isn't simply about admiring impressive architecture, though the pyramids are certainly that. It's about understanding a society that grappled with fundamental human concerns: life, death, belief, power, and the very nature of existence, in ways that resonate even today. They developed incredibly sophisticated systems of governance, mathematics, astronomy, and medicine, achieving feats of engineering that challenged the limits of their time. Their art, literature, and religious beliefs offer a unique window into a worldview vastly different from our own, yet surprisingly relatable. Studying this civilization allows us to examine the roots of many of our modern concepts, from organized religion and centralized government to advancements in architecture and agriculture. It's a comparative study in societal development, offering valuable insights into the patterns of human history and the enduring challenges faced by all civilizations. The pyramid builders weren't just architects and engineers. They were artists, mathematicians, astronomers, and religious thinkers. Their pyramids aren't merely tombs. They're complex symbolic representations of their cosmology, their beliefs about the afterlife, and the power of the pharaoh. Think about the sheer scale of these structures: millions of stone blocks, each weighing several tons, precisely fitted together without the use of modern tools. This required not only immense logistical organization, but also a deep understanding of mathematics, geometry, and physics. Consider the social implications as well. Building the pyramids demanded a highly organized workforce, a complex system of administration, and a surplus of resources. It reveals much about the societal structure, the role of the pharaoh, and the distribution of wealth and power. The organization of labor is crucial to understanding ancient Egypt, from the skilled craftsmen and architects to the farmers and laborers who provided the necessary resources and manpower. Examining this demonstrates a clear example of a centralized society functioning at scale over multiple generations. Ultimately, studying the pyramid builders allows us to confront fundamental questions about what it means to be human. They sought to understand their place in the universe, to create lasting monuments to their beliefs, and to achieve immortality through their actions. Their struggles with mortality, their pursuit of knowledge, and their artistic endeavors are timeless themes that continue to resonate with us today. Their legacy isn't just about the impressive structures they left behind. It's about the ideas, beliefs, and values that shaped their society and continue to influence our world. By immersing ourselves in their world, we gain a deeper understanding of ourselves, our own culture, and the enduring mysteries of the human condition. It's a journey through time, a celebration of human ingenuity, and a reminder of the power of ideas to shape the course of history. Ancient Egypt wasn't a vast empire stretching across continents. It was remarkably concentrated along the Nile River. The geography of Egypt is absolutely crucial to understanding its development. The Nile, as you know, is the longest river in the world, and it provided the lifeblood of the civilization. Annual flooding deposited fertile silt onto the land, allowing for abundant harvests. This predictability was critical. It allowed the Egyptians to develop a stable agricultural system and support a growing population. The surrounding desert, while harsh, also provided a natural barrier against invaders. This combination of fertile land and natural protection allowed Egyptian civilization to flourish for over 3,000 years. Without the Nile, there would be no Egypt, and the pyramid builders wouldn't have had the resources to create their monumental structures. Now, let's pinpoint the temporal context. Egyptian civilization developed in stages, broadly divided into periods like the early dynastic period, the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, the New Kingdom, and the Late Period. We'll be focusing primarily on the Old Kingdom, roughly 2686 to 2101 BCE, the age of the Great Pyramids. This period saw the construction of the most iconic structures, like the pyramids of Giza. However, understanding the broader timeline is vital. The Old Kingdom wasn't the beginning, nor was it the end. It was a culmination of centuries of development, and it was followed by periods of political instability, foreign invasion, and cultural transformation. The New Kingdom, roughly 1550 to 2070 BCE, for example, represents a period of imperial expansion and artistic innovation. It's important to remember that ancient Egypt wasn't static. It was a dynamic civilization that evolved over time. Our knowledge of ancient Egypt isn't based on complete documentation. It's largely pieced together from archaeological evidence, tombs, temples, artifacts, and written records. The discovery of the Rosetta Stone in 1799, for example, was a pivotal moment. It provided the key to deciphering hieroglyphs, unlocking a wealth of information about ancient Egyptian culture, religion, and history. Archaeological sites like Giza, Saqqara, and the Valley of the Kings continue to yield new discoveries, challenging and refining our understanding of this fascinating civilization. The preservation of these sites is critical, not just for historical and cultural reasons, but also for the future generations who will continue to study and learn from the past. It's an ongoing process of discovery, reconstruction, and interpretation, and it requires careful attention to detail, rigorous analysis, and a healthy dose of skepticism. Over the next 11 chapters, we'll delve deeper into the world of the pyramid builders. We'll begin by exploring the foundations of Egyptian society, their religious beliefs, their political structure, and their economic system. Then, we'll examine the practical aspects of pyramid construction, the quarrying of stone, the transportation of materials, and the engineering techniques employed. We will also uncover the daily lives of the people who built these monumental structures, the skilled craftsmen, the laborers, and the administrators. We will address the social hierarchy and the religious significance of death and the afterlife. It's crucial to understand that the pyramids weren't simply tombs. They were complex religious monuments designed to ensure the pharaoh's successful journey into the afterlife. We'll also investigate the beliefs surrounding death and the afterlife, which played a central role in Egyptian culture. The elaborate burial rituals, the mummification process, and the inclusion of grave goods were all intended to ensure the deceased's successful transition into the next world. We'll explore the symbolism of the Book of the Dead, the various deities associated with the afterlife, and the concept of Ma'at, the cosmic order that governed the universe. We will further study the evolution of pyramid design, from the stepped pyramid of Djoser to the true pyramids of Giza, analyzing the architectural innovations and engineering challenges involved. Finally, we'll consider the legacy of the pyramid builders, their contributions to art, architecture, mathematics and astronomy, and their enduring influence on our world. Throughout this course, we'll be drawing on a variety of sources, archaeological evidence, ancient texts, and scholarly interpretations, to reconstruct a comprehensive picture of ancient Egyptian civilization. We'll also be critically examining different perspectives and challenging conventional wisdom. I encourage you to actively engage with the material, ask questions, and form your own informed opinions. This isn't just about memorizing facts, it's about developing a deeper understanding of a fascinating culture and its enduring legacy. Prepare to embark on a journey through time, explore the mysteries of ancient Egypt, and discover the wonders of the pyramid builders. The Nile River. It wasn't simply a river to the ancient Egyptians, it was life itself. Imagine a long, slender ribbon of water cutting through a vast, arid desert. That's the Nile. Without it, Egypt would have been just another expanse of uninhabitable sand. Its consistent, predictable flooding was the cornerstone of their civilization. Unlike the unpredictable floods of the Tigris and Euphrates in Mesopotamia, the Nile's flood cycle was remarkably regular. This predictability allowed the Egyptians to develop a sophisticated agricultural system and build a stable society. The river provided not only water for irrigation, but also a fertile silt, a rich black soil deposited during the annual flood, which was ideal for growing crops. This silt acted as a natural fertilizer, ensuring bountiful harvests year after year. The ancient Egyptians understood this intrinsic link between the river and their prosperity, and they revered the Nile as a deity, Hapi, embodying its life-giving power. The annual flood wasn't just a natural event, it was integrated into the Egyptian calendar and agricultural practices. The Egyptians divided their year into 3 seasons: Akhet, the season of inundation or flooding; Pereh, the season of emergence when the waters receded and seeds were sown; and Shemu, the season of harvest. Akhet was a time of rest and rebuilding, as fields were submerged and people focused on other tasks like construction or craftsmanship. Pereh was a flurry of activity, as farmers meticulously prepared their fields and planted crops. Shemu was a time of celebration and abundance, as the harvest was gathered and stored. This cyclical pattern shaped their entire worldview and reinforced their belief in the regenerative power of nature. They cultivated a variety of crops, including barley, wheat, flax, and vegetables, providing a stable food supply for a growing population. Their mastery of irrigation techniques further enhanced agricultural productivity. Beyond agriculture, the Nile served as a crucial transportation artery. It was the primary means of moving goods and people throughout Egypt. Boats, constructed from papyrus reeds or wood, were used to transport agricultural products, building materials, and finished goods between different settlements. The prevailing winds blew against the current, allowing boats to sail upstream, while the current facilitated downstream travel. This efficient transportation system fostered trade and communication, connecting different regions of Egypt and contributing to the growth of urban centers. The Nile also provided a source of fish and other aquatic resources, supplementing the Egyptian diet. It was truly the lifeblood of their civilization, shaping their economy, society, and culture in profound ways. Consider that without the ease of transport the Nile afforded, building projects like the pyramids would have been infinitely more difficult. Egyptian society was highly stratified, meaning it was organized into distinct social classes with varying degrees of power, wealth, and status. At the very top of this hierarchy was the pharaoh, the absolute ruler of Egypt, considered a god on earth. The pharaoh owned all the land, controlled the economy, and commanded the army. Their authority was unquestioned, and they were revered as divine beings. Below the pharaoh were the priests, nobles, and high officials, the elite class who held positions of power and influence. These individuals administered the government, oversaw religious ceremonies, and controlled vast estates. They enjoyed a life of luxury and privilege, supported by the wealth and labor of the lower classes. This upper class comprised a relatively small percentage of the population, but they controlled the vast majority of the resources. Below the elite class were the scribes, artisans, and merchants. Scribes were highly valued members of society, responsible for recording important information, managing accounts, and composing official documents. They were literate, a rare skill in ancient Egypt, and played a crucial role in the administration of the state. Artisans, skilled craftsmen such as carpenters, sculptors, and jewelers, created the beautiful objects and monuments that adorned temples and palaces. Merchants facilitated trade, exchanging goods and services between different regions. This middle class enjoyed a comfortable standard of living, though they did not possess the same level of wealth and power as the elite. They were essential to the functioning of the Egyptian economy and society. At the bottom of the social hierarchy were the farmers, laborers, and slaves. Farmers constituted the vast majority of the population and were responsible for cultivating the land and producing the food that sustained Egypt. They worked long hours under harsh conditions, and their lives were often difficult. Laborers performed manual labor, such as building temples, digging canals, and transporting goods. Slaves, typically prisoners of war or debtors, had the lowest status in society and were subjected to forced labor. While slavery existed in ancient Egypt, it was not the same as the chattel slavery practiced in later centuries. Slaves often had certain rights and could even own property. This rigid social structure, while seemingly unfair, provided stability and order to Egyptian society, enabling the construction of monumental projects and the flourishing of a vibrant civilization. For the majority of Egyptians, life revolved around the agricultural cycle. Farmers lived in small villages along the Nile, in houses built from mud bricks. These homes were typically simple, consisting of a few rooms and a courtyard. Daily life was physically demanding, involving long hours of labor in the fields. Farmers cultivated crops such as barley, wheat, flax, and vegetables, using simple tools like hoes, sickles, and shadoufs, a device used to lift water from the Nile for irrigation. Their diet consisted primarily of bread, beer, vegetables, and occasionally fish or meat. Family life was central to their existence, with children expected to contribute to the farm work from a young age. The rhythm of their days was dictated by the seasons and the needs of the land. The lives of artisans, while also demanding, were different from those of farmers. Artisans lived in towns and cities, where they worked in workshops creating a wide variety of goods. These goods included pottery, jewelry, furniture, tools, and sculptures. Artisans often specialized in a particular craft, passing their skills down through generations. They were highly valued members of society, as their creations were used by both the elite and the common people. Their workshops were typically equipped with a variety of tools, including chisels, hammers, saws, and kilns. The creation of these objects required not only technical skill, but also artistic talent and creativity. Despite their different occupations, farmers and artisans shared many aspects of daily life. Both groups lived relatively simple lives, with a strong emphasis on family and community. Their diets were similar, consisting primarily of bread, beer, vegetables, and occasionally fish or meat. They worshipped the same gods and goddesses, and they participated in the same religious festivals. Their homes were modest, but they provided shelter and comfort. While their lives were often challenging, they were also filled with purpose and meaning. They contributed to the prosperity of Egypt, and they played an essential role in the creation of a remarkable civilization. Their dedication and craftsmanship ensured the continuation of their way of life for generations to come. The pharaoh, in ancient Egyptian society, was far more than just a king or ruler. He wasn't simply a political leader. He was considered a divine being, a god on earth. This wasn't a claim made lightly, nor was it merely symbolic. The Egyptians believed the pharaoh was the intermediary between the gods and the people, responsible for maintaining Ma'at, the cosmic order, truth, justice, and balance. Imagine a world where the leader is the embodiment of everything that keeps existence from collapsing into chaos. That was the pharaoh's role. He was responsible for ensuring the Nile flooded predictably, guaranteeing a bountiful harvest, and protecting Egypt from its enemies, both seen and unseen. His very existence was seen as vital to the continued prosperity and stability of the nation. Without a pharaoh who upheld Ma'at, the universe itself was believed to be in danger. This divine status permeated every aspect of Egyptian life and heavily influenced how power was exercised. This divine mandate extended to all areas of governance. The pharaoh controlled the land, the water, and all the resources within Egypt. He wasn't simply a figurehead, he actively managed the economy. He oversaw large-scale irrigation projects, ensuring a consistent water supply for agriculture, the backbone of the Egyptian economy. He directed the construction of granaries to store surplus grain, providing a safety net against famine. He organized labor for monumental building projects like temples and pyramids, not just as displays of power, but also as a way to provide employment and economic stimulus. Importantly, he owned all the land the people were, in a sense, tenants who paid taxes in the form of crops and labor. This system allowed the pharaoh to amass immense wealth and power, but it also placed upon him the immense responsibility of providing for his people. The pharaoh's administration wasn't a solitary undertaking. He relied on a complex bureaucracy of officials, scribes, and overseers to manage the kingdom. Scribes were particularly important, as they were responsible for keeping records of everything from tax payments and agricultural yields to construction projects and military campaigns. This meticulous record-keeping allowed the pharaoh to monitor the kingdom's resources and make informed decisions. High-ranking officials such as viziers, the pharaoh's chief advisors, oversaw various departments of the government, ensuring that the pharaoh's orders were carried out efficiently. The pharaoh's power, therefore, wasn't just absolute, it was also deeply institutionalized, relying on a sophisticated network of administrators to function effectively. The pharaoh's power wasn't merely theoretical. It was demonstrated through a highly centralized administrative system. Egypt was divided into provinces, called nomes, each governed by a nomarch. These nomarchs were responsible for collecting taxes, administering justice, and overseeing local affairs. While they held considerable power within their own nome, they were ultimately accountable to the pharaoh. This system allowed the pharaoh to maintain control over the entire kingdom, even in remote areas. It also ensured that resources were collected efficiently and distributed fairly, at least in theory. It's important to remember that the administration, while efficient, could also be prone to corruption and abuse of power. Beyond internal administration, the pharaoh also controlled foreign relations and trade. Egypt engaged in extensive trade with neighboring regions, such as Nubia, the Levant, and Mesopotamia. Valuable commodities like gold, copper, timber, and exotic goods were imported and exported. The pharaoh controlled this trade through a system of royal monopolies and tariffs, further enriching the royal treasury. Diplomatic relations were also carefully managed, with the pharaoh sending envoys to foreign courts and receiving ambassadors from abroad. These diplomatic exchanges were not only about trade, but also about maintaining peace and preventing conflicts. The pharaoh's control extended to the military. He was the commander-in-chief of the Egyptian army, responsible for defending the kingdom from external threats. The army was a professional force, consisting of infantry, archers, and charioteers. The pharaoh led the army in battle, inspiring his troops and ensuring victory. Military campaigns were not only about defense, but also about expansion and resource acquisition. Conquered territories were often incorporated into the Egyptian empire, providing additional wealth and manpower. The military, therefore, played a crucial role in maintaining the pharaoh's power and ensuring the prosperity of the kingdom. The pharaoh's authority wasn't just based on military might or administrative efficiency. It was also reinforced through a powerful system of symbols. The Nemes headdress, a striped cloth worn on the head, was a distinctive symbol of kingship. The crook and flail, traditionally used by shepherds, represented the pharaoh's role as the shepherd of his people. The uraeus, a cobra emblem, symbolized royal authority and divine protection. These symbols weren't merely decorative, they were potent visual cues that reinforced the pharaoh's legitimacy and authority. The royal cartouche, an oval enclosure containing the pharaoh's name written in hieroglyphs, was another important symbol of kingship. It appeared on monuments, tombs, and official documents, identifying the pharaoh and asserting his authority. The very act of writing the pharaoh's name within the cartouche was considered a sacred act, reinforcing his divine status. The use of hieroglyphs themselves was also significant, as they were believed to possess magical power. Monumental architecture, particularly temples and pyramids, served as powerful symbols of royal power and legitimacy. These structures weren't merely functional, they were designed to impress and inspire awe. The sheer scale of these projects demonstrated the pharaoh's ability to mobilize vast resources and command the labor of thousands. They also served as a testament to his divine status, connecting him to the gods and ensuring his eternal remembrance. The very act of building these monuments was a religious act, reinforcing the pharaoh's role as the intermediary between the gods and the people. Ancient Egyptian religion wasn't a single unified system. It was a complex tapestry woven from local beliefs, evolving over millennia. At its heart was a polytheistic worldview, the belief in many gods and goddesses, each responsible for different aspects of the world and human life. These weren't necessarily seen as all-powerful in the way some modern conceptions of God are. They were powerful beings, certainly, but also subject to fate and, sometimes, even reliant on human devotion for their continued influence. Think of them more as incredibly potent forces of nature, personified. The gods weren't distant observers, they were intimately involved in the daily lives of Egyptians, influencing everything from the flooding of the Nile to the success of a harvest, or the health of an individual. Each city often had its own patron deity, and over time, certain gods gained prominence, becoming central figures in the national pantheon. Understanding this fluid, evolving nature of Egyptian religion is crucial. Let's discuss some of the key deities. Ra, the sun god, was arguably the most important, especially during certain periods. He was believed to travel across the sky each day in a solar barque, battling the serpent Apophis each night to ensure the sun would rise again. This daily journey represented the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, central to Egyptian beliefs. Osiris, initially a local god of fertility, became the ruler of the underworld and the judge of the dead. His story of being murdered by his brother Set, resurrected by his wife Isis, and becoming king of the afterlife is a powerful myth about overcoming adversity and achieving eternal life. Isis, Osiris' wife, was revered as a powerful magician, a devoted mother, and a protector of children. She was also associated with healing and magic. Set, the god of chaos, storms and deserts, represented the forces that threatened order and stability. He was often depicted as a rival to Osiris and Horus. And then there's Horus, the falcon-headed god, associated with kingship, the sky, and protection. He was the son of Osiris and Isis, and his struggle against Set to avenge his father's death symbolized the triumph of good over evil. Egyptian mythology wasn't just a collection of stories, it was a way of explaining the natural world, understanding the human condition, and providing a moral framework for life. Myths weren't seen as false in the way we sometimes view them today. They were considered sacred narratives that contained profound truths about the universe and our place within it. For example, the annual flooding of the Nile, once seen as a random event, it was understood as a manifestation of the god Hapi, the personification of the river's abundance. The sun's journey across the sky was seen as the daily voyage of Ra in his solar bark. These myths provided a sense of order and predictability in a world that could often feel chaotic and unpredictable. They also reinforced the importance of maintaining Ma'at, a concept that encompasses truth, justice, balance, and cosmic order. Upholding Ma'at was essential for ensuring the continued prosperity of Egypt and the well-being of its people. To the ancient Egyptians, death wasn't an end, but a transition, a journey to the afterlife. This journey, however, wasn't automatic. It required careful preparation and the performance of specific rituals. The Egyptians believed that a person possessed several components: a physical body Kut, a soul or personality Ba, a vital force Ka, a shadow Shut, and a name Ren. After death, these elements needed to be preserved and reunited in the afterlife. The Ka was particularly important. It was believed to be a spiritual double of the person, requiring sustenance even after death. This is why tombs were stocked with food, drink, and other provisions. The Ba was believed to be able to travel between the world of the living and the afterlife, visiting loved ones and enjoying the pleasures of the other world. The journey to the afterlife wasn't easy. The deceased had to navigate a dangerous underworld, filled with demons and obstacles. But the most crucial moment was the weighing of the heart. In this ceremony, presided over by Osiris, the heart of the deceased was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. If the heart was lighter than the feather, meaning the person had lived a virtuous life, they were allowed to enter the afterlife. But if the heart was heavier, weighed down by sin and wrongdoing, it was devoured by Ammit, a monstrous creature with the head of a crocodile, the body of a lion, and the hindquarters of a hippopotamus. This meant the soul was condemned to oblivion, a fate the Egyptians dreaded. This concept of moral accountability is central to their beliefs about death and the afterlife. The ultimate goal was to achieve eternal life in the afterlife, a paradise often depicted as a lush, fertile land similar to the Nile Valley. Here, the deceased could continue to enjoy the pleasures of life, farming, hunting, feasting, and spending time with loved ones. However, achieving this required more than just a virtuous life. It also required careful preservation of the body. This belief led to the practice of mummification, a complex process designed to prevent the body from decaying, ensuring that the ka had a physical home to return to. The mummification process involved removing the internal organs, drying the body with natron salt, and wrapping it in layers of linen bandages. The entire process could take up to 70 days and was performed by skilled embalmers. The preserved body was then placed in a sarcophagus, which was often richly decorated with protective spells and images of the gods. The sarcophagus was then placed in a tomb, along with all the provisions and treasures the deceased would need in the afterlife. Funerary practices in ancient Egypt were incredibly elaborate and expensive, reflecting the importance they placed on the afterlife. These practices varied over time and depending on the social status of the deceased, but certain elements remained constant. The first step was typically the announcement of the death and the commencement of mourning rituals. These rituals involved wailing, lamenting, and displaying grief. Professional mourners were often hired to amplify the expression of sorrow. Following the mourning period, the body was prepared for mummification, as we've discussed. Simultaneously, preparations were made for the tomb and the funerary goods that would accompany the deceased. The tomb itself was considered the eternal home of the deceased, and it was therefore meticulously decorated and furnished. The walls were often covered with hieroglyphic inscriptions and paintings depicting scenes from the afterlife, as well as spells and prayers to protect the deceased. The tomb was also filled with funerary goods, everything the deceased would need in the afterlife, including food, drink, clothing, furniture, weapons, jewelry, and games. These goods were intended to provide comfort and sustenance for the deceased in the afterlife, and they also served as symbols of their status and wealth. Ushabti figurines, small statues depicting servants, were also placed in the tomb to perform labor for the deceased in the afterlife. The final stage of the funerary process was a series of rituals designed to ensure the successful transition of the deceased to the afterlife. These rituals included the opening of the mouth ceremony, in which priests symbolically restored the senses of the deceased, allowing them to eat, drink, speak, and breathe in the afterlife. Other rituals involved offerings of food and drink to the ka of the deceased, as well as prayers and incantations to protect them from harm. Once these rituals were complete, the tomb was sealed, and the deceased was left to begin their eternal journey. We begin our exploration of pyramid development not with the towering structures we often envision, but with a far simpler form, the mastaba. The mastaba, from the Arabic word for bench, truly resembles a bench in its long, flat, rectangular shape. These were the earliest dynastic tombs, appearing around 300 BCE, and were primarily used for the elite royalty and high-ranking officials. Think of them as the forerunners to the pyramids, representing a crucial first step in monumental tomb architecture. They weren't built as grand statements of power, at least not initially, but as functional spaces to house the deceased and provide for their afterlife. The core structure was built of mud brick, readily available in Egypt, and sometimes reinforced with stone. This contrasts sharply with the later pyramids, which would heavily rely on precisely cut stone blocks. The interior wasn't a single vast chamber, but a complex of rooms and passageways, a sort of underground house for the deceased. These rooms were filled with grave goods, pottery, furniture, clothing, and even food, all intended to sustain the individual in the afterlife. The mastaba wasn't just a tomb, it was a miniature representation of their earthly life, a promise of continuation beyond death. The internal layout of a mastaba was surprisingly intricate. Typically, you'd find a central chamber, the serdab housing a statue of the deceased, allowing their ka, or life force, a place to reside. This was incredibly important. Egyptians believed the ka needed a physical anchor to survive in the afterlife. Surrounding the serdab were storage rooms filled with those grave goods we discussed, everything the deceased might need in their new existence. There was also a false door, a decorative niche in the wall believed to be a portal through which the deceased's spirit could come and go. This false door was often decorated with inscriptions and scenes depicting the deceased enjoying life and receiving offerings. Importantly, mastabas weren't isolated structures. They were often part of larger complexes, including courtyards, chapels, and even workshops. These complexes served not only as burial sites, but also as centers for ancestor worship and remembrance. Family members would regularly visit the tomb, bringing offerings of food and drink to sustain their loved ones in the afterlife. This act of remembrance was considered essential for maintaining the deceased's existence. The materials used in mastaba construction were largely determined by availability and wealth. Mud brick, as we've said, was the most common building material, being relatively inexpensive and easy to produce. However, wealthier individuals might incorporate stone into their mastabas, particularly for the internal chambers and decorative elements. Limestone and sandstone were popular choices, as they were relatively easy to quarry and work with. The exterior of the mastaba was often covered with whitewashed plaster, giving it a bright, clean appearance. This plaster was sometimes decorated with painted scenes depicting the deceased's life, religious beliefs, and hopes for the afterlife. These scenes provide valuable insights into the beliefs and practices of ancient Egyptians. While mastabas were initially rectangular, they gradually evolved over time, becoming more complex and elaborate. Some mastabas were enlarged and extended, incorporating additional chambers and courtyards. Others were built with stepped sides, foreshadowing the development of the pyramids. These stepped mastabas represent a crucial transitional phase in Egyptian architecture, bridging the gap between the simple rectangular mastaba and the majestic pyramids that would come to dominate the landscape. Now, we arrive at a pivotal moment in pyramid development, the Step Pyramid of Djoser at Saqqara. Built around 2630 BCE during the Third Dynasty, this wasn't simply a larger mastaba, it was a revolutionary departure, designed by the brilliant architect Imhotep. Imhotep, later deified as a god of medicine and architecture, envisioned something far more ambitious than a flat-roofed tomb. He began with a traditional mastaba, but instead of stopping there, he stacked successively smaller mastabas on top of each other, creating a towering, stepped structure. This wasn't a haphazard addition, it was a carefully planned and executed design. The pyramid consists of 6 steps, reaching a height of around 62 meters, 203 feet. While it doesn't have the smooth sides of the later pyramids, it represents a monumental achievement in engineering and architectural innovation. It marks the first large-scale stone construction project in Egypt and a significant leap forward in tomb building. The construction of the Step Pyramid wasn't simply about stacking stones. It required meticulous planning and skilled craftsmanship. The stones used were primarily limestone, quarried from nearby sites. These blocks weren't precisely cut and fitted like the later pyramids, but they were carefully shaped and laid to create a stable structure. The entire complex surrounding the pyramid is equally impressive. It's enclosed by a massive perimeter wall and includes a series of courtyards, chapels, and other structures. These structures served various purposes, including religious rituals, storage, and the reception of offerings. One of the most intriguing features of the complex is the Hebsed Court, a large open space used for a ritual that reaffirmed the king's power and vitality. This ritual was typically performed after 30 years of a king's reign and involved a series of athletic feats and symbolic acts. The entire complex was designed not just as a tomb, but as a complete royal estate, ensuring the king's continued existence in the afterlife. The burial chamber itself, located beneath the pyramid, is surprisingly simple. It's a small, undecorated chamber containing a granite sarcophagus. The sarcophagus was originally intended to house the king's body, but it was later found to be empty. This suggests that the tomb was likely robbed in antiquity, as were many other ancient Egyptian tombs. However, the chamber still contained a number of grave goods, including pottery, stone vessels, and jewelry. These objects provide valuable insights into the material culture of the Third Dynasty. The Step Pyramid of Djoser represents a crucial transitional phase in pyramid development. It's a clear departure from the earlier mastabas and a precursor to the true pyramids that would emerge in the Fourth Dynasty. It demonstrates the Egyptians' growing mastery of stone construction and their increasingly sophisticated understanding of architecture and engineering. It's a testament to the vision of Imhotep and the power of the Egyptian pharaohs. Following the Step Pyramid, the evolution towards the true smooth-sided pyramids began. The Fourth Dynasty saw significant experimentation and refinement. The first attempt at a true pyramid was the Bent Pyramid of Sneferu at Dashur. Its name comes from its unusual shape. It starts with a steep slope, but then abruptly changes to a shallower slope halfway up. This change was likely due to structural concerns. The steep slope may have been causing cracks and instability. The Bent Pyramid represents a crucial learning experience for the Egyptian builders. They realized that a shallower slope was more stable and sustainable. This led them to redesign the pyramid, resulting in the Red Pyramid, also at Dashur. The Red Pyramid, named for the reddish hue of its limestone casing, is considered the first successful true pyramid. It has smooth sides and a symmetrical shape, representing a significant achievement in engineering and architecture. But the pinnacle of pyramid building is undoubtedly the Great Pyramid of Giza, built for Pharaoh Khufu Cheops. This monumental structure, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, stands as a testament to the Egyptians' mastery of construction, mathematics, and astronomy. Its precision and scale are simply breathtaking. The Great Pyramid was originally covered with smooth, polished limestone casing stones, which reflected the sunlight and made it shine brilliantly. Sadly, most of these casing stones have been removed over the centuries for use in other buildings. The evolution from the Step Pyramid to the true pyramids represents a remarkable journey of innovation and experimentation. It demonstrates the Egyptians' ability to learn from their mistakes, refine their techniques, and push the boundaries of architectural and engineering achievement. The pyramids are not just tombs, they are symbols of power, religious belief, and the enduring legacy of ancient Egypt. They continue to fascinate and inspire us today, offering a glimpse into a remarkable civilization that flourished thousands of years ago. The Giza Plateau, a location steeped in mystery and wonder, is perhaps most famous for the Great Pyramid of Khufu. Constructed during the 4th Dynasty, around 2580 to 2560 BC, this monument stands as the oldest and largest of the Giza Pyramid complex. It's a testament to the incredible engineering prowess and organizational capabilities of the ancient Egyptians. Often referred to simply as the Great Pyramid, it was originally known as Akhet Khufu, Horizon of Khufu. Now, When we think about its dimensions, it's almost difficult to grasp. It originally stood at 146.6 meters, 481 feet tall, and its base covers an area of around 5.3 hectares, or approximately 13 acres. Over time, erosion has reduced its height slightly, but it remains an incredibly imposing structure. The core of the pyramid is composed of approximately 2.3 million blocks of limestone, each weighing an average of 2.5 to 15 tons. Think about the sheer logistical challenge of quarrying, transporting, and precisely placing those blocks. It truly is an astonishing achievement. The internal structure of the Great Pyramid is equally fascinating. It contains several chambers and passageways, including the subterranean chamber, the Grand Gallery, and the King's Chamber. The King's Chamber, located near the center of the pyramid, housed a granite sarcophagus, believed to be the final resting place of Khufu. However, the sarcophagus was empty when discovered, leading to speculation about whether Khufu was actually buried there or if it served a symbolic purpose. The design of the internal passages is quite ingenious. The ascending and descending passages are meticulously aligned, potentially with astronomical significance. Some theories suggest that these passages were designed to align with specific stars or constellations, reflecting the ancient Egyptians' deep understanding of astronomy and their beliefs about the afterlife. The air shafts within the pyramid also remain a subject of debate, with some believing they served a ventilation purpose, while others suggest they had a ritualistic or symbolic meaning. The construction of the Great Pyramid involved a monumental undertaking in terms of labor and organization. While popular culture often depicts slaves building the pyramids, archaeological evidence suggests that skilled laborers, artisans, and engineers formed the workforce. These workers were likely organized into teams, and they were provided with housing, food, and medical care. The construction process involved quarrying the limestone blocks, transporting them to the Giza Plateau using ramps and levers, and precisely placing them using a complex system of ropes and pulleys. It's estimated that it took around 20 years to complete the Great Pyramid, requiring the effort of tens of thousands of workers. The precise methods used to lift and place the blocks remain a topic of debate among archaeologists and engineers, but it's clear that the ancient Egyptians possessed a remarkable level of engineering expertise. The alignment of the pyramid is also remarkably precise, with its sides aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal directions. The Pyramid of Khafre, built for Khufu's successor, Khafre, is the second tallest pyramid at Giza. Standing at approximately 136.4 meters, 447 feet tall, it appears taller than the Great Pyramid due to its location on higher ground. A key distinguishing feature of Khafre's pyramid is the presence of a casing of polished limestone at its apex, still visible today. This casing gives the pyramid a smoother, more refined appearance than the Great Pyramid, which has lost much of its casing over time. The internal structure of Khafre's pyramid is simpler than that of the Great Pyramid, consisting of a single burial chamber and a few small side chambers. While less complex in design, it's still a remarkable feat of engineering and construction. Perhaps the most iconic monument associated with the Giza Plateau is the Great Sphinx. Carved from a single block of limestone, the Sphinx depicts a mythical creature with the body of a lion and the head of a human, believed to represent Khafre. Its massive size, approximately 73 meters, 240 feet long, and 20 meters, 66 feet high, is truly awe-inspiring. The Sphinx served as a guardian of Khafre's pyramid complex, and it was likely associated with solar worship. Over the centuries, the the Sphinx has been subjected to extensive erosion, and it has been buried in sand multiple times. Numerous restoration efforts have been undertaken to preserve this magnificent monument, but it remains a fragile and vulnerable structure. The meaning behind the Sphinx's missing nose is a popular historical debate. The relationship between the Pyramid of Khafre and the Sphinx is particularly significant. The Sphinx appears to be directly aligned with Khafre's pyramid, suggesting that it was intentionally positioned as a guardian of the royal tomb. Some theories propose that the Sphinx face may have originally resembled Khafre, further reinforcing this connection. The Sphinx's enclosure, a rectangular trench surrounding the monument, also served a protective function, preventing sand from accumulating around the statue. The careful alignment and strategic positioning of these monuments demonstrate the ancient Egyptians' sophisticated understanding of astronomy, engineering, and religious symbolism. The Pyramid of Menkora, built for the pharaoh Menkora, is the smallest of the three main pyramids at Giza. Standing at approximately 65.5 meters, 215 feet tall, it offers a stark contrast to the towering heights of the Great Pyramid and the Pyramid of Khafre. Interestingly, Menkora's pyramid began as a stepped pyramid, but it was later converted into a smooth-sided pyramid, similar to the other two. This change in design suggests that the construction process may have been interrupted or altered due to unforeseen circumstances. The mortuary complex associated with Menkare's pyramid was particularly lavish, featuring intricate carvings and a wealth of artifacts. Fragments of alabaster vases, granite statues, and other precious objects have been discovered within the complex, providing valuable insights into the artistic and religious practices of the time. The discovery of a large number of unfinished statues within the complex suggests that the construction process may have been abruptly halted, possibly due to Menkare's untimely death. The materials were in place, but the vision was not fully realized. While smaller in scale than the other two pyramids, Menkare's pyramid is no less significant. Its unique features and the wealth of artifacts discovered within its complex provide valuable insights into the evolution of pyramid construction and the religious beliefs of the ancient Egyptians. The Giza Plateau as a whole stands as a testament to the ingenuity, artistry, and spiritual power of this remarkable civilization, a place where history and mystery converge. The sheer scale of the pyramids demands that we first consider the sourcing of the stone itself. The Egyptians didn't simply find ready-made building blocks. They actively quarried the limestone, granite, and basalt required a monumental undertaking in its own right. Most of the limestone used for the pyramid's core came from nearby quarries, particularly those on the Giza Plateau itself. This proximity significantly reduced the logistical challenges, but it didn't eliminate them. Quarrying wasn't a simple matter of hacking away at the rock face. Skilled laborers used copper chisels, wooden mallets, and dolerite pounders, a very hard stone, to carefully detach blocks of stone. The process involved creating a series of holes, then inserting dry wooden wedges. These wedges were then soaked with water, causing them to expand and split the stone along predetermined lines. It's a surprisingly elegant and effective method given the tools available. They also used fire setting, heating the rock with fire and then rapidly cooling it with water to induce fracturing. But this was less common due to the immense amount of fuel required and the risk of damaging the stone. Once the stone was quarried, the real challenge began: transportation. The Egyptians didn't have wheels in the modern sense. Their technology hadn't reached that point, so they couldn't simply roll the stones into place. Instead, they relied on a combination of ingenuity and manpower. The most common method involved creating a slick pathway, often made of compacted sand and lubricated with water. The stone blocks, weighing anywhere from 2.5 to 80 tons, were then placed on wooden sledges and dragged across this pathway. The sheer force required to move these massive blocks was immense. Evidence suggests that the Egyptians used a wetting technique, pouring water onto the sand in front of the sledge to reduce friction. This, combined with the careful leveling of the pathway, significantly reduced the effort needed. We know this because depictions of this process are painted on the walls of tombs. The workers themselves were organized into teams, and they likely used rhythmic chanting and coordinated pulling to maximize their efficiency. It's worth noting that the pathways weren't always straight. The Egyptians frequently constructed causeways, elevated roadways to navigate uneven terrain and shorten the distance to the construction site. The sledges themselves were carefully constructed. They weren't just simple planks of wood. They were built with a slightly curved base to distribute the weight of the stone block more evenly. The wood used was likely acacia, a durable and readily available species in Egypt. The Egyptians also used ropes made of papyrus or flax to help pull the sledges and control their movement. These ropes were often bundled together to increase their strength. To assist in maneuvering the stone blocks, the Egyptians employed a clever system of levers and rollers. Levers were used to lift and adjust the position of the blocks, while wooden rollers were used to help move them over short distances. This combination of techniques allowed the Egyptians to overcome the challenges of transporting these massive stones and bring them to the construction site. It's important to remember this wasn't a haphazard process. It was a carefully planned and executed logistical operation that required a significant investment of resources and manpower. They were masters of applying basic mechanical principles on a monumental scale. Once the stones arrived at the construction site, the real engineering challenges began. How did the Egyptians lift these massive blocks to such heights? The most widely accepted theory is the use of ramps. However, the exact type of ramp remains a subject of debate among archaeologists. The simplest form would have been a straight ramp, but this would have required a massive amount of material and a very gradual slope to be stable. A more likely scenario is the use of a spiral ramp that wrapped around the pyramid. This would have reduced the amount of material needed and allowed for a steeper slope. Regardless of the specific design, the ramps were likely constructed from mud brick, stone rubble, and wooden planks. The stones were then hauled up the ramp using ropes, levers, and manpower. As each layer of the pyramid was completed, the ramp would have been extended upwards. The precision with which the stones were fitted together is remarkable. The joints between the stones are often so tight that you can't even slip a razor blade between them. This level of precision required skilled stonemasons who were experts in shaping and fitting stone. They used copper chisels, stone hammers, and abrasives to carefully shape the stones to the required dimensions. They also used plumb bobs and sighting tools to ensure that the stones were perfectly aligned. The outer casing stones, made of fine white limestone, were particularly carefully fitted together. These stones were polished to a smooth, reflective surface, giving the pyramids their characteristic gleaming appearance. The Egyptians also used a technique called dressing to refine the surface of the stones and create a uniform appearance. The internal structure of the pyramids is just as impressive as the external structure. The pyramids contain a complex network of chambers, passageways, and shafts. These chambers were used for a variety of purposes, including the burial of the pharaoh, the storage of treasures, and the performance of religious rituals. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for example, contains the King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber, and the Grand Gallery. These chambers are connected by a series of narrow passageways and shafts. The shafts are aligned with specific stars and constellations, suggesting that they may have had an astronomical purpose. The construction of these internal structures required careful planning and execution. The Egyptians used a variety of techniques to ensure that the chambers were stable and secure. They used massive stone blocks to support the ceilings and walls, and they used a system of relieving chambers to distribute the weight of the structure. For many years, the popular image of pyramid construction involved enslaved laborers toiling under the lash. However, archaeological evidence now paints a very different picture. While there was undoubtedly a hierarchical system and forced labor for certain tasks, the primary workforce appears to have been comprised of skilled laborers and paid workers. These weren't slaves in the traditional sense, but rather conscripted laborers, farmers and craftsmen who were required to work on the pyramids during the Nile's annual flood season, when agricultural work was impossible. These workers were housed in purpose-built villages near the construction site, and they were provided with food, lodging, and medical care. Evidence from worker villages indicates a relatively high standard of living, with access to a varied diet, comfortable housing, and even leisure activities. Furthermore, archaeological discoveries of worker cemeteries reveal that these laborers were treated with respect, even in death. They were buried in carefully constructed tombs, and they were provided with offerings of food, pottery, and tools. This suggests that they were valued members of society, and that their work was considered important. Of course, pyramid construction was still a demanding and dangerous undertaking. Workers faced long hours, harsh conditions, and the risk of injury or death. However, the evidence suggests that they were not simply exploited slaves, but rather skilled laborers who were compensated for their work and treated with a degree of respect. The construction of the pyramids was a massive undertaking that required a highly organized workforce. There were specialized teams of workers responsible for different tasks, such as quarrying stone, transporting materials, shaping stones, and laying blocks. These teams were led by skilled overseers and craftsmen, who were responsible for ensuring that the work was carried out efficiently and accurately. The construction of the pyramids was not just a feat of engineering, but also a testament to the organizational skills and collaborative spirit of the ancient Egyptians. It was a project that brought together people from all walks of life to create a lasting monument to their pharaoh and their civilization. Let's begin by visualizing where the builders actually lived. It wasn't a nomadic existence, traveling each day from distant cities. Instead, dedicated villages sprung up near the pyramid construction sites, becoming temporary homes for the skilled laborers, craftsmen, and support staff. These weren't haphazard camps, mind you. Archaeological evidence at Giza, specifically the lost city of the pyramid builders discovered in recent years, reveals remarkably organized settlements. The layout was carefully planned, with distinct residential areas, workshops, storage facilities, and administrative buildings. Think of it as a purpose-built city, arising solely to support the pyramid project. The scale of these villages was substantial, large enough to house tens of thousands of workers during peak construction phases. Recent excavations show evidence of bakeries, breweries, and even medical facilities, suggesting a level of infrastructure far beyond what we might expect for a temporary workforce. These settlements offered a degree of comfort and community, crucial for maintaining a productive labor force over decades. What was life actually like within these workers' villages? Houses were relatively simple, constructed primarily from mud brick. This material was abundant and readily available, though it required constant maintenance. Houses weren't grand palaces, but they provided shelter from the elements and a space for families to live. The size of the dwellings varied, likely reflecting the workers' skill level and status. We've found evidence of multiple rooms within some houses, suggesting family units lived together. The villages weren't solely functional, they were communities. Evidence suggests shared spaces for dining, socializing, and religious practices. Craft workshops were often integrated into the residential areas, allowing workers to combine work and family life. Though it was hard labor, these were not slave camps. Workers received rations, medical care, and participated in communal activities, demonstrating a level of societal organization and care. This fostered loyalty and contributed to the sustained effort required for such monumental construction. Archaeological investigation of these settlements is ongoing, revealing ever more about daily life. The careful excavation of streets, houses, and workshops provides a remarkable window into the past. What's fascinating is the level of planning and organization. Streets were laid out in a grid pattern, suggesting a centralized authority responsible for urban planning. Storage facilities were strategically located to ensure efficient distribution of resources. Administrative buildings housed officials responsible for managing the workforce and overseeing the construction project. We've uncovered evidence of a sophisticated system of record-keeping, using hieroglyphs and numerical notations. This allowed officials to track rations, monitor labor hours, and manage the flow of materials. The meticulousness of these records is astonishing, demonstrating a commitment to efficiency and control. This wasn't simply a chaotic construction site, it was a carefully managed operation, supported by a thriving and well-organized community. Let's consider the logistics of feeding tens of thousands of workers. It wasn't a small undertaking. A steady supply of food and resources was crucial for maintaining productivity. The ancient Egyptians were skilled agriculturalists, capable of producing surplus crops. The Nile River was the lifeblood of the civilization, providing water for irrigation and fertile soil for cultivation. Primarily, the diet consisted of bread and beer, staples readily available and providing essential carbohydrates. Wheat and barley were the main crops, grown in the fertile land surrounding the Nile. These grains were harvested, ground into flour, and baked into bread or brewed into beer. This combination provided a balanced and nutritious diet for the workforce. Beyond grains, the diet included vegetables, fruits, and fish. These were sourced from the Nile and surrounding agricultural lands. However, meat was a luxury, reserved for special occasions or the elite. The efficient management of resources was paramount. Agricultural production needed to be carefully planned and coordinated. The Egyptians developed a sophisticated system of irrigation, using canals and dikes to control the flow of water. This allowed them to maximize crop yields and ensure a steady supply of food. Beyond agriculture, other essential resources included stone, wood, and copper. Stone was quarried from nearby hills and used for building the pyramid and associated structures. Wood was imported from Lebanon, as Egypt lacked sufficient forests. Copper was mined from the Sinai Peninsula and used for tools and weapons. The transportation of these resources was a major logistical challenge. The Nile River was the primary transportation artery, with boats carrying goods to and from the construction site. A network of roads and canals connected the various resource centers and the pyramid complex. This required a significant investment in infrastructure and a skilled workforce to manage the flow of materials. Effective storage and rationing were critical to prevent waste and ensure equitable distribution. Large storage facilities were constructed near the pyramid complex to house the surplus food and resources. These facilities were carefully guarded to prevent theft and spoilage. A system of record-keeping was used to track the quantities of food and resources available. This allowed officials to monitor consumption and adjust rations as needed. Rations were distributed to workers on a regular basis, ensuring they had enough food and resources to perform their duties. The rations varied depending on the workers' skill level and the type of work they performed. Skilled laborers and overseers received larger rations than unskilled workers. This system ensured that the most valuable workers were adequately compensated for their efforts. The meticulous management of food and resources was a testament to the organizational skills of the ancient Egyptians. It allowed them to sustain a large workforce for decades and complete the monumental task of building the pyramids. The organization of labor was a massive undertaking. It wasn't a chaotic free-for-all. While popular imagination often portrays pyramid construction as slave labor, the reality is far more nuanced. Archaeological evidence suggests a highly organized workforce comprised of skilled craftsmen, engineers, and laborers. The workforce was divided into teams, each responsible for a specific task. These teams were led by overseers, who ensured that the work was performed efficiently and to a high standard. Communication was crucial, and a system of signals and commands was used to coordinate the movements of workers and materials. The scale of the workforce varied depending on the stage of construction. During peak periods, tens of thousands of workers were employed on the project. Managing such a large workforce required a sophisticated administrative system. The supply chain for materials was equally complex. Stone was quarried from nearby hills and transported to the construction site by boat or sled. Wood was imported from Lebanon and used for tools, scaffolding, and ramps. Copper was mined from the Sinai Peninsula and used for tools and weapons. A network of roads and canals connected the various resource centers and the pyramid complex. This required a significant investment in infrastructure and a skilled workforce to manage the flow of materials. A system of record-keeping was used to track the quantities of materials available and to ensure that they were distributed efficiently. This allowed officials to monitor consumption and adjust supplies as needed. The administrative system was crucial to the success of the project. A team of scribes and officials was responsible for managing the workforce, tracking materials, and maintaining records. These officials used a system of hieroglyphs and numerical notations to record information. This allowed them to monitor progress, identify problems, and make informed decisions. The administrative system was not only efficient but also transparent. Records were carefully maintained and readily accessible to those who needed them. This ensured that the project was managed responsibly and that resources were used effectively. The organization of labor and supplies, combined with a sophisticated administrative system, allowed the ancient Egyptians to achieve what many believed was impossible: the construction of the pyramids, monuments to their ingenuity, ambition, and organizational prowess. Good morning. We've spent considerable time discussing the monumental architecture of ancient Egypt, the pyramids, the temples, the obelisks. But a temple wasn't merely a structure of stone. It was a canvas, a repository of stories, beliefs, and daily life. And that's where reliefs and paintings come in. These weren't simply decorative flourishes, they were integral to the purpose and function of these sacred spaces. Reliefs, as you might guess, are essentially sculpted images that project from a flat surface. Think of them as three-dimensional pictures carved into the stone. The Egyptians favored low relief, or bas relief, where the images are only slightly raised, allowing for remarkable detail within a limited space. These reliefs weren't just about aesthetics, they were about permanence. Stone lasts, and so the stories and beliefs depicted within them were intended to endure for eternity. They were a visual form of record-keeping, a way to communicate with both the gods and future generations. Paintings, meanwhile, adorned not just the walls of tombs and temples, but also coffins, statues, and other objects. Unlike reliefs, paintings offered a broader range of colors and allowed for more complex compositions. Egyptian artists didn't use the same techniques as we do today. They didn't concern themselves with realistic perspective or shading. Instead, they developed a unique style based on convention and symbolism. Figures were often depicted in a composite view, head and legs in profile, torso facing forward. This wasn't a lack of skill, it was a deliberate choice to present a complete and easily recognizable image. The colors used in Egyptian paintings weren't arbitrary either. Each color held symbolic meaning: blue for the heavens, green for rebirth, red for power and vitality. These weren't simply decorative choices, they were integral to the religious and magical beliefs of the Egyptians. And importantly, they were often applied using mineral pigments mixed with a binding medium like gum arabic, creating images that have survived for thousands of years. The creation of these artworks was a painstaking process. Artists were highly skilled craftspeople, often working under the patronage of the pharaoh or the priesthood. They would first prepare the surface, smoothing the stone or plaster and applying a layer of white gesso to create a clean canvas. Then, they would sketch the design using red ochre and finally apply the colors using brushes made from reeds or animal hair. Hieroglyphs, the Egyptian writing system, were often incorporated into the paintings and reliefs. These weren't just labels, they were integral to the narrative, providing context and meaning. They could tell stories, record historical events, or express religious beliefs. The combination of imagery and text created a powerful and enduring form of communication. And let's remember, these weren't just works of art, they were religious offerings, magical spells, and declarations of power. They were intended to influence the gods, ensure the pharaoh's continued reign, and guarantee a successful afterlife. Egyptian art is brimming with symbolism. Everything, from the colors used to the animals depicted, held a deeper meaning. It's crucial to understand this symbolism, to truly appreciate the art and its context. Let's start with animals. The scarab beetle, for example, wasn't just a bug, it was a powerful symbol of rebirth and regeneration. The Egyptians observed the scarab rolling dung balls across the ground and associated it with the sun god Ra, rolling the sun across the sky each day. Thus, the scarab became associated with creation, transformation, and eternal life. Similarly, the falcon, often associated with the god Horus, symbolized kingship, protection, and divine power. The ibis, with its long curved beak, was sacred to the god Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing. Understanding these animal associations unlocks a whole new layer of meaning within the art. Royal symbols were particularly important. The uraeus, the rearing cobra, was a symbol of kingship and divine authority, often depicted on the pharaoh's crown. The Nemes headdress, with its striped pattern, also signified royalty and protection. The Ankh, a looped cross, represented life and immortality, often carried by gods and pharaohs. The Djed pillar symbolized stability and endurance, representing the backbone of Osiris, the god of the afterlife. These symbols weren't just decorative, they were assertions of power, declarations of divine right, and promises of eternal life. Even the posture and gestures of the figures depicted in the art held symbolic meaning. For example, the pharaoh was often depicted with a rigid, frontal pose, signifying his power and authority. Hands could be raised in offering, or clenched in a fist, conveying different messages. Color, as we touched upon, also played a significant role. Blue represented the heavens and the Nile, the source of life. Green symbolized rebirth and vegetation. Red represented power, vitality, and protection. White symbolized purity and sacredness. Black symbolized the fertile soil of the Nile and the realm of the afterlife. Amulets, small charms worn for protection, were also imbued with symbolic meaning. The Died amulet, shaped like a pillar, offered stability and endurance. The Tiet amulet, shaped like a pillar, offered stability and endurance. The Tiet amulet, shaped like a knot, symbolized protection and good luck. The Scarab amulet, as we've discussed, represented rebirth and transformation. The careful selection of materials, colors, and symbols wasn't arbitrary. It was a deliberate attempt to harness the power of the gods and ensure a successful life and afterlife. Understanding this complex web of symbolism is crucial to unlocking the true meaning of Egyptian art and its enduring legacy. The decoration within Egyptian temples and tombs wasn't merely aesthetic, it served a profound purpose. It wasn't about making things look pretty, although beauty was certainly appreciated. The primary function of decoration was religious and magical. Temples were considered the homes of the gods, and the decoration within them was intended to honor and appease the deities. The paintings and reliefs depicted scenes of religious ceremonies, offerings, and the gods themselves, effectively creating a sacred space where humans could interact with the divine. The decoration wasn't static, it was part of a continuous cycle of ritual and offering. Priests would perform ceremonies in front of the decorated walls, reinforcing the connection between the human and divine realms. Tombs, similarly, were decorated with scenes from the afterlife and depictions of the deceased enjoying eternal life. These decorations weren't just about commemorating the deceased, they were intended to magically ensure their successful journey into the afterlife. The paintings and reliefs depicted scenes of the Book of the Dead, a collection of spells and incantations designed to guide the deceased through the underworld. The decoration wasn't just visual, it was magical. The images were believed to come to life in the afterlife, providing the deceased with everything they needed to sustain themselves. Funerary goods, carefully placed within the tomb, further reinforced this belief. Decoration also served a political purpose. The pharaoh used art and architecture to project their power and authority. Temples and tombs were adorned with depictions of the pharaoh performing heroic deeds and receiving divine blessings. These images were intended to legitimize the pharaoh's rule and reinforce their divine right to rule. The sheer scale and grandeur of these structures served as a powerful statement of royal power. Ultimately, the decoration within Egyptian temples and tombs was a complex and multifaceted phenomenon. It was a blend of religious belief, magical practice, political propaganda, and artistic expression. It was a reflection of the Egyptians' profound worldview and their unwavering belief in the power of the divine. We've discussed the monumental pyramids built for the pharaohs, but Egyptian society was, of course, hierarchical. The elite nobles, high officials, priests also sought elaborate tombs, though on a smaller scale. These were not pyramids, but mastabas. The word mastaba itself simply means bench in Arabic, and it's a very descriptive term. Early mastabas resembled just that, a flat-roofed, rectangular structure, something like a raised platform. Imagine a long, low bench made of mud brick. These early mastabas were built as subterranean structures, with chambers carved underneath the bench-like form. Over time, mastabas became more complex. They evolved to include multiple chambers above ground as well, creating a more substantial, recognizable structure. They were usually built of mud brick and sometimes stone, and were often surrounded by smaller, associated burial structures for family members or retainers. The core function, though, remained consistent to provide a secure and lasting resting place for the deceased and to facilitate their journey into the afterlife with all the necessary provisions. Now, while mastabas were prevalent, particularly in the early dynastic period, we also see a fascinating shift towards rock-cut tombs. These weren't built on the land, but in it. Officials and nobles, especially during the Old Kingdom and beyond, began to excavate elaborate tombs directly into the cliffs of the desert. The most famous example, of course, is the necropolis at Saqqara and Beni Hassan, but rock-cut tombs existed across Egypt. This was a significant undertaking, requiring skilled laborers and engineers. The advantage, however, was that it offered increased security against tomb robbers, and the natural rock provided a more durable structure. The interiors of these rock-cut tombs were often decorated in a similar fashion to mastabas, with reliefs and paintings depicting scenes from the deceased's life and beliefs about the afterlife. These tombs weren't simply storage spaces for the dead, they were meant to be eternal homes. The location of these tombs, both mastabas and rock-cut structures, was also deeply symbolic. They were typically built on the west bank of the Nile, because the west was associated with the setting sun and the realm of the dead. The Egyptians believed that the deceased embarked on a journey westwards, following the path of the sun, to join the gods in the afterlife. Furthermore, the proximity to the Nile was practical. It facilitated the transportation of building materials and funerary goods. The construction of these tombs, even for the non-royal elite, was a substantial investment of resources and labor. It speaks volumes about the importance the Egyptians placed on death, the afterlife, and the preservation of memory. These weren't merely burial places, they were statements of status, wealth, and religious devotion, eternal homes, designed to ensure a successful transition to the next world. One of the most remarkable features of these noble tombs is the incredible artwork that adorns their walls. Unlike the monumental, often highly stylized art associated with the pharaohs, the scenes in noble tombs offer a more intimate and detailed glimpse into everyday life. These weren't scenes of battles or royal ceremonies, they were depictions of farming, fishing, hunting, feasting, and craft production. We see farmers tending to their crops, fishermen casting their nets, artisans creating pottery and jewelry, and banquets filled with music and entertainment. These scenes weren't merely decorative, they were believed to magically ensure the continued availability of these goods and activities in the afterlife. The Egyptians believed that by depicting these scenes in the tomb, they could recreate them for the deceased, providing them with everything they needed to live comfortably in the next world. Hunting and fishing scenes are particularly common in these tombs. These weren't just depictions of sport, they were essential provisioning activities. The animals depicted ducks, geese, fish, antelopes represented a vital source of food for the deceased in the afterlife. The scenes often show the nobleman participating in the hunt, demonstrating his skill and providing for his family and, crucially, for his afterlife existence. Similarly, fishing scenes depict the nobleman overseeing the catch, ensuring a plentiful supply of fish for his eternal sustenance. These scenes aren't simply about obtaining food, though. They're about demonstrating the nobleman's control over the natural world and his ability to provide for his family both in life and in death. It was a display of status and competence that extended beyond the earthly realm. Scenes of craft production, pottery making, weaving, carpentry, brewing are also frequently depicted. These scenes provide valuable insights into the technologies and skills of ancient Egyptian artisans. We can see the tools they used, the techniques they employed, and the materials they worked with. These scenes weren't just about showcasing the nobleman's wealth, they were about ensuring the continued availability of crafted goods in the afterlife. The nobleman would need furniture, clothing, pottery, and other essential items in the next world, and by depicting their production in his tomb, he could magically ensure their continued supply. These scenes provide a fascinating window into the daily lives of the artisans who created these objects, offering a glimpse into their skills, knowledge, and craftsmanship. They remind us that ancient Egypt was a society built on the skill and ingenuity of its artisans. The contents of these tombs, beyond the artwork, offer invaluable insights into ancient Egyptian society. The funerary offerings, food, drink, clothing, jewelry, weapons, furniture, provide a glimpse into the material culture and daily lives of the elite. These objects weren't simply placed in the tomb as decoration, they were intended to provide the deceased with everything they needed to live comfortably in the afterlife. The quality and quantity of these offerings reflect the nobleman's wealth, status, and social standing. The presence of certain objects such as weapons or hunting tools suggests the nobleman's profession or hobbies. The variety of offerings, food, drink, clothing, jewelry, reflects the diverse needs and desires of the elite. The depictions of women in these tombs are particularly revealing. While ancient Egypt was a patriarchal society, women held a relatively high status compared to other ancient civilizations. They could own property, conduct business, and inherit wealth. The scenes in noble tombs often depict women participating in social activities, overseeing household tasks, and playing musical instruments. These depictions suggest that women played an important role in the lives of the elite and enjoyed a degree of freedom and autonomy. The presence of female servants and attendants in the tombs further reinforces this idea. These depictions offer a valuable glimpse into the lives of women in ancient Egypt and challenge some of the traditional assumptions about their roles and status. Finally, the hieroglyphs and inscriptions found in these tombs provide valuable insights into the religious beliefs and practices of the elite. These inscriptions often include prayers, spells, and invocations to the gods, intended to ensure the deceased's safe passage to the afterlife. They also provide information about the nobleman's name, title, and family lineage. The presence of these inscriptions suggests that religion played an important role in the lives of the elite, and that they believed in the power of magic and ritual. The study of these inscriptions allows us to understand their beliefs about death, the afterlife, and the nature of the universe. They offer a fascinating window into the religious world of ancient Egypt and provide valuable insights into the worldview of the elite. For centuries, the pyramids of Egypt stood as testaments to the power and wealth of the pharaohs. But like all things, their construction wasn't eternal. Around the end of the Old Kingdom, approximately 2200 BCE, pyramid building underwent a significant decline. It wasn't a sudden stop, more a gradual scaling back in ambition and quality. Several factors contributed to this shift. Economic strain was paramount. The sheer cost of mobilizing resources, the quarrying, transportation, and skilled labor required for massive pyramid projects placed an immense burden on the Egyptian economy. Extended periods of drought and fluctuating Nile levels also exacerbated these financial difficulties, reducing agricultural surpluses and impacting the state's ability to fund such endeavors. The centralized power of the pharaohs also began to wane, as regional governors, or nomarchs, gained more influence and autonomy. They were less inclined to dedicate their resources to projects dictated by the central government, especially if they didn't directly benefit their own regions. This decentralization of power led to a decrease in the collective effort that had fueled the earlier pyramid-building projects. Beyond the economic and political challenges, there was a decline in the quality of workmanship. The skilled artisans and engineers who had built the Great Pyramids of Giza were not consistently available for later projects. Perhaps their knowledge wasn't effectively passed down, or perhaps a shift in societal priorities led to a decline in the training of skilled laborers. As a result, later pyramids often exhibit inferior construction techniques, using smaller, less precisely cut stones and relying more on rubble cores. This led to structural instability and a shorter lifespan for these later monuments. Additionally, the increasing threat of tomb robbing posed a significant problem. Despite elaborate security measures, many pyramids were plundered shortly after completion. This discouragement, coupled with a changing religious climate, led to a shift in funerary practices. Pharaohs began to favor rock-cut tombs in the Valley of the Kings, which were more easily concealed and defended. This transition marked a significant departure from the pyramid-building tradition that had defined the Old Kingdom. The environmental factors also played a role in the decline. While the Nile River was the lifeblood of Egypt, fluctuations in its flood levels could disrupt agricultural production and impact the economy. Prolonged droughts or unusually low floods could lead to famine and social unrest, making it difficult to sustain large-scale building projects. Changes in climate, such as increased desertification, may have also contributed to the economic strain. Moreover, the very act of quarrying vast amounts of stone for pyramid construction could have had a localized environmental impact, leading to deforestation and soil erosion. These cumulative effects, combined with the economic, political, and social challenges, ultimately led to a decline in the ambition and scale of pyramid construction. While pyramids continued to be built for several centuries, they were significantly smaller and simpler than their predecessors, marking a clear transition in Egyptian funerary architecture. Following the grand pyramids of the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom witnessed a revival of pyramid building, but on a considerably smaller and simpler scale. Pharaohs like Amenemhat I and Senusret I constructed their pyramids at locations like Dashur and Lisht. These pyramids, while still impressive, were typically built with less precise stonework and utilized a core of rubble and mud brick, rather than the solid limestone blocks of the earlier pyramids. This reduction in material quality and construction complexity was likely a result of the economic constraints faced by the Middle Kingdom rulers. The emphasis shifted from sheer scale to structural stability and efficiency. The pyramids themselves were often surrounded by smaller, less elaborate complexes, including mortuary temples, causeways, and subsidiary tombs. These complexes were designed to provide for the pharaoh's afterlife, but they lacked the grandeur and ornamentation of the Old Kingdom monuments. The pyramids of the 12th dynasty, like those of Amenemhat III at Hawara, show even more of a transition. Hawara's pyramid is a ruin today, but originally it was a massive structure with a complex labyrinthine substructure beneath it. This labyrinth, which fascinated ancient Greek historians like Herodotus, was intended to deter tomb robbers, but it ultimately proved ineffective. The pyramid complex at Hawara also included a mortuary temple, a valley temple connected by a causeway, and a series of subsidiary tombs. However, the scale and quality of these structures were considerably smaller than those of the Old Kingdom pyramids. The overall impression is one of practicality and efficiency, rather than monumental grandeur. The smaller size and simpler construction techniques allowed the Middle Kingdom pharaohs to complete their funerary monuments more quickly and economically, but they also resulted in a loss of the symbolic power and artistic sophistication of the earlier pyramids. The inscriptions and decorations within these later pyramids also reflect a shift in religious beliefs and artistic styles. While the Old Kingdom pyramids were lavishly decorated with elaborate scenes of the pharaoh's life and afterlife, the Middle Kingdom pyramids tend to be more sparsely decorated, with a greater emphasis on religious texts and spells. The so-called pyramid texts, which are a collection of religious spells and hymns, were commonly inscribed on the walls of the Middle Kingdom pyramids, intended to help the pharaoh navigate the afterlife. These texts provide valuable insights into the religious beliefs and funerary practices of ancient Egypt. The artistic styles also evolved, becoming more refined and expressive. The Middle Kingdom artists favored a more naturalistic style, depicting human figures and animals with greater accuracy and detail. However, the overall scale and grandeur of the decorations were considerably smaller than those of the Old Kingdom pyramids, reflecting the changing priorities of the Middle Kingdom rulers. The tradition of pyramid building wasn't limited to Egypt. The Kingdom of Kush, located in Nubia, modern-day Sudan, also embraced pyramid construction, though their pyramids differed significantly from those of their northern neighbors. From approximately 800 BCE to 350 CE, Nubian kings and queens were buried in pyramids, primarily at sites like Meroe, Napata, and Nuri. These Nubian pyramids were generally smaller and steeper than the Egyptian pyramids, often rising to heights of only 20 to 30 feet. They were constructed with a steeper slope, giving them a more pointed appearance. The core of the Nubian pyramids was typically built of rubble and sandstone blocks, covered with a layer of smooth sandstone casing. The interiors of the Nubian pyramids were also different from those of the Egyptian pyramids. While the Egyptian pyramids typically featured complex networks of chambers and passageways, the Nubian pyramids generally had a single burial chamber, accessible through a small, steep staircase. The burial chambers often contained the remains of the deceased, along with a variety of grave goods, including pottery, jewelry, weapons, and furniture. The Nubian pyramids were often decorated with colorful murals and hieroglyphic inscriptions, depicting scenes from the life of the deceased and religious motifs. These decorations provide valuable insights into the beliefs and customs of the Nubian people. The Nubian pyramids reflect the unique cultural identity and artistic traditions of the Kingdom of Kush. While they were undoubtedly influenced by Egyptian pyramid construction, they also incorporated distinct Nubian elements, such as the steeper slope, the simpler interior layout, and the distinctive decorations. The Nubian pyramids served not only as tombs for the kings and queens of Kush, but also as symbols of their power, wealth, and religious beliefs. They stand as a testament to the rich and vibrant history of Nubia, a land that played a significant role in the ancient world. The study of Nubian pyramids provides valuable insights into the cultural exchange and interactions between Egypt and Nubia, as well as the unique development of Nubian civilization. The pyramids of Egypt, even today, hold a powerful grip on our collective imagination. It's remarkable how these structures, built millennia ago, continue to permeate popular culture. Think about it, from movies and novels to architecture and even board games. The pyramid shape serves as a shorthand for mystery, power, and the ancient world. This isn't merely about aesthetic appeal. It speaks to a deeper fascination with concepts of immortality, the afterlife, and the ambitions of past civilizations. Early depictions, particularly in the 19th and early 20th centuries, often leaned heavily on exoticism and romanticized notions of Egypt, fueled by archaeological discoveries and the growing field of Egyptology. Films like the Mummy franchise, while not always historically accurate, played a significant role in shaping public perception, associating pyramids with curses, hidden treasures, and supernatural dangers. However, the influence extends beyond sensationalized fiction. The pyramid form, with its inherent stability and geometric precision, has been adopted in architectural designs globally, from government buildings to modern homes, symbolizing permanence and enduring strength. This isn't simply imitation, but a conscious borrowing of a visual language that evokes a sense of grandeur and historical weight. Consider the Louvre Pyramid in Paris, a striking example of how ancient forms can be reinterpreted in a contemporary context, prompting discussion about history, modernity, and cultural appropriation. The pyramid's presence in science fiction is particularly telling. It's often used as a symbol of advanced technology, alien civilizations, or hidden knowledge. Think of the pyramids on Mars, a recurring motif in speculative fiction, suggesting that ancient astronauts may have visited Earth and shared their knowledge with ancient Egyptians. This narrative, though largely pseudoscientific, demonstrates the power of the pyramid to represent something beyond human comprehension. Even in more grounded science fiction, pyramids are frequently employed as imposing structures housing advanced technology or serving as strategic military bases. This speaks to the inherent visual suggestion of solidity and defensibility associated with the form. Beyond visual representation, the mathematical and geometric properties of pyramids have also inspired scientific and artistic endeavors. The golden ratio, found in the proportions of the Great Pyramid, has been studied for its aesthetic appeal and its presence in nature, leading to its application in art, architecture, and even music. This fascination with the mathematical underpinnings of ancient structures highlights a broader human desire to understand the universe and find order within chaos. It's fascinating how a construction intended as a tomb can become a source of inspiration for so many different fields, demonstrating its enduring cultural resonance. However, it's crucial to remember that the popular depiction of pyramids isn't always accurate. The sensationalism and romanticization that often accompany their portrayal can obscure the complex realities of ancient Egyptian life. The pyramids weren't built by slaves, as often portrayed in popular culture, but by skilled laborers who were compensated for their work. They weren't simply tombs, but elaborate complexes that served religious and political functions. Understanding this nuance is essential to appreciating the true legacy of the pyramid builders. Furthermore, the appropriation of Egyptian imagery and symbolism can be problematic. The use of pyramids in advertising, fashion, and other commercial contexts can strip away their cultural significance and perpetuate harmful stereotypes. It's important to approach these depictions with critical awareness and respect for the ancient Egyptian culture that created them. Ultimately, the enduring appeal of the pyramids lies in their ability to connect us to the past, to inspire our imaginations, and to remind us of the enduring power of human ambition and ingenuity. But it also calls for a responsible and informed engagement with their history and cultural significance. The story of the pyramids isn't just about their construction, it's also about their rediscovery. For centuries after the decline of ancient Egypt, the pyramids stood as silent witnesses to the passage of time, slowly being engulfed by the shifting sands of the desert. While they were never entirely forgotten by local populations, their true significance was largely lost to the outside world. The rediscovery of the pyramids began in earnest with the arrival of European explorers and scholars in the 18th and 19th centuries. Figures like Napoleon Bonaparte, during his Egyptian campaign, sparked a renewed interest in ancient Egypt, leading to the first systematic archaeological investigations. However, these early investigations were often driven by colonial agendas and a desire for plunder rather than a genuine desire to understand the culture. The Rosetta Stone, discovered in 1799, proved to be a crucial key to unlocking the mysteries of ancient Egypt. Its inscription, written in hieroglyphs, Demotic script and ancient Greek, allowed scholars to finally decipher the hieroglyphic writing system, opening up a vast treasure trove of knowledge about ancient Egyptian history, religion, and culture. The 19th and 20th centuries witnessed a surge in archaeological excavations in Egypt, led by pioneers like Howard Carter, who famously discovered the intact tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922. This discovery captivated the world and sparked a renewed fascination with ancient Egypt. However, it also raised ethical concerns about the removal of artifacts from their original context. The field of archaeology has evolved significantly since those early days. Today, archaeologists prioritize preservation, context, and collaboration with local communities. Modern archaeological techniques, such as ground-penetrating radar and remote sensing, allow archaeologists to investigate sites without disturbing them. The use of digital technologies, such as 3D modeling and virtual reality, allows archaeologists to reconstruct ancient sites and share their discoveries with the public. The study of the pyramids continues to this day, with new discoveries being made regularly. Advanced imaging techniques are being used to explore the interior of the pyramids, revealing hidden chambers and passageways. However, archaeology is not without its challenges. Looting and illegal excavation continue to threaten archaeological sites in Egypt. Climate change and environmental degradation also pose a threat to the preservation of ancient monuments. The repatriation of artifacts to their countries of origin remains a contentious issue. The ethical considerations surrounding archaeology are complex and require careful consideration. The future of archaeological research in Egypt depends on a commitment to responsible and sustainable practices. It also requires a collaborative effort between archaeologists, local communities, and governments. The pyramids remain a source of wonder and inspiration, but they also serve as a reminder of the fragility of our cultural heritage. Preserving these ancient monuments for future generations is a responsibility that we all share. The ongoing research and preservation efforts ensure that the legacy of the pyramid builders will continue to inspire and educate for centuries to come. The pyramids are more than just ancient monuments, they are testaments to human ingenuity, organization, and ambition. The sheer scale of these structures, built with limited technology, is awe-inspiring. The precise alignment of the pyramids with the cardinal directions demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of astronomy and mathematics. The complex engineering techniques used to quarry, transport, and lift the massive stone blocks are still studied by engineers today, but the lessons of the pyramids extend beyond engineering and technology. The construction of these structures required a highly organized workforce, efficient logistics, and effective leadership. The pyramids also reflect the religious beliefs and social values of ancient Egyptian society. The elaborate tombs and funerary rituals demonstrate a deep concern with the afterlife and the preservation of the soul. These lessons remain relevant today, offering insights into the challenges and opportunities facing modern societies. The pyramids remind us of the importance of planning, organization, and collaboration in achieving ambitious goals. The pyramids also offer valuable lessons about sustainability and resource management. The ancient Egyptians understood the importance of preserving their natural resources and living in harmony with their environment. They developed innovative techniques for managing water resources, cultivating crops, and building durable structures. These lessons are particularly relevant in the face of climate change and environmental degradation. The pyramids remind us of the importance of long-term planning and responsible resource management. Furthermore, the pyramids serve as a reminder of the power of human creativity and imagination. The elaborate decorations, intricate carvings, and symbolic imagery reflect a rich cultural heritage and a profound artistic sensibility. These lessons inspire us to embrace creativity and innovation in all aspects of our lives. The enduring legacy of the pyramid builders is a testament to the power of human potential. In conclusion, the pyramids are more than just ancient monuments. They are timeless symbols of human achievement, ingenuity, and resilience. Their enduring legacy continues to inspire and educate us today. The lessons of the pyramid builders remain relevant in the face of modern challenges. By studying these ancient structures, we can gain valuable insights into the past, present, and future of human civilization. The pyramids remind us of the importance of planning, organization, collaboration, sustainability, and creativity. They remind us of the power of human potential and the enduring legacy of human achievement. As we continue to explore and preserve these ancient monuments, we honor the memory of the pyramid builders and ensure that their legacy will continue to inspire generations to come. The pyramids stand as a testament to the enduring power of human civilization, a beacon of hope for the future.